Hey,
Hey, how's it going?
good. You figured it out.
Yeah, smooth.
The the start of these are always a little rough. I'm like, and today we're going to be talking about.
Good.
So, first off, I just want to thank you so much for doing this. I've been reaching out to so many people about talking about homeopathy. I love it so much. I've used it so much, but still have so much to learn, and I just have a ton of questions. So, um, first, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us about you and what you've done, and then we'll get into it.
Sure. So my name's Samantha. I am a certified classical homeopath. I'm certified in Ontario as well as the States. So I take clients remotely as well as around my area. I've been doing homeopathy for over 5 years. I was doing it longer than that before I was certified. But yeah, I've always found it calling me, and it's something that you never really stop learning. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll try and simplify it for everyone. It can get really, complicated, but it's really interesting for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I have quite a few books. I actually have a couple. This is the one book that I got when I was pregnant. My sister recommended it to me, and this is an awesome book. I don't know if you've seen this before or not, but
Yeah.
it's just a great go-to. So I've read a ton. I have this one here for pregnancy and birth because I have a community space where I've gathered all of my things that I used for my pregnancy and birthing experience. So yeah, I keep reading, but like you said, I get into it and then I'm like, whoa, this is getting complicated. You lost me. Just tell me what to use. So
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. So one of my first questions, and I just have to jump right in with this, essential oils. I use a lot of essential oils. So whenever I'm about to specifically treat my daughter, I'm like, okay, which direction do I go? And I've heard a couple times that using essential oils can negate the efficacy of homeopathics. Is that true? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So we have something that we call antidoting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just essential oils. There's a whole slew of things that can antidote a remedy, and it really is just the fact that there are other things that are interfering with your energy and your energetic force. So some things like camphor, for example, like that's very strong
Mm-hmm.
smelling, peppermint, coffee even can be antidoting a remedy. It's just that they're so strong that sometimes they can kind of interfere with what the remedy's trying to do on maybe like a smaller energetic level or a
Mm-hmm.
quieter energetic level. So a lot of times, like I might recommend like to someone who might be having an aggravation from a remedy to like smell Vicks
Mm-hmm.
because it has camphor in it or something just to help like antidote the remedy to bring it down a little bit. So
Oh, okay. I never thought of that. That's great.
yeah, so it's not necessarily that you can't use the essential oils, but you just want to be careful. Like if you do have a remedy working and it stops working, just think, consider redosing again because maybe you've antidoted it with
Okay.
something.
Is there a time frame that you would recommend in between trying remedies? Like if I'm doing, let's just say cold calm. I start with cold calm, and then I'm not really noticing anything. I do essential oils, back and forth. Is there a time frame that you like to give between the two?
Yeah, so again, it depends. If you're, I guess be talking more about acute dosing versus chronic because there are differences with potencies and how you would dose. But for acute situations, say, you want to try one remedy and see if it works, I would recommend usually doing like a 30C potency throughout the day, maybe 3 times, and do that for like 2 days. And if you don't see any results, then you can switch to a different remedy. You should see some kind of movement, even if
Mhm.
it's small, for acute situations, especially.
Awesome. So I guess I jumped the gun here, but if you want to explain a little bit about homeopathy, what it is, how it works, the safety of it, of course, because I've heard, I'm sure you've gotten this before. I'm really in the mom space, so I've mentioned before belladonna, and people have been like, "That's a deadly nightshade! Oh my god!" And then I'm
Yeah,
like, "Yeah, but
of
it's
course.
like treating like," and then I get lost. So if you can explain that, I would love that.
Of course. So basically, homeopathic remedies, they are taken from a raw source. Say you have like a mineral, animal, plant. Those are like the three main sources that we get our remedies from. And we take it from its raw source and we basically put it into, we basically get it down to a fine powder or into a liquid form, which we would call like a mother tincture. And we dilute and succuss and dilute and succuss and dilute and succuss. And that's how we get our potencies, like 1C, 12C, you'll see 30C is very common. So that's, I could go, into the whole how dilution works and all that. But we get our remedies. And then so how they work is you try and match somebody as best you can to a remedy. Somebody who is sick, for example, they'll have a slew of symptoms, and a remedy, based on years and years and years and years of provings that we've done with the different remedies, will have a slew of symptoms as well. So you try and match a remedy to a person, as best you can. So like I like to give the example of, say like when you're cutting an onion, for example, when you're cutting an onion, you start crying, your nose is watering, you feel better when you go outside because your eyes are just stinging, right? So in homeopathy, we have Allium cepa, which is a red onion, and we often give that for allergies that have like the stinging, burning eyes, all the symptoms that would match kind of like what the substance itself produces, like the symptoms they produce. So in a simple way, that's just how we try and match a person to a remedy based on their symptoms. And what the remedy is essentially doing is, so we all have like a vital force is what we call it. It's like the conductor in your body. It's like an energetic force that wants to always keep you in balance. So, say something happens emotionally, you get sick, your vital force is off, like your balance isn't there. What the remedy is basically doing is it has this like initial effect. So when you take a remedy, you have like the remedy pushing you, basically. So you have this initial effect. It's like a gentle nudge or a wake-up call to your system where the remedy is mimicking like all of the symptoms that you have of your illness. And then the vital force, pushes back. So your body has a healing response to that. And that's essentially, the opposite reaction and creating like an effect to balance out the remedy. And that essentially balances out the illness as well, because the symptoms match and your body's now responding to the remedy, but also responding to your body's symptoms, that match the remedy. So that in a nutshell is kind of, it's basically just pushing your body to heal itself. It's not like, allopathic medicine where, like it's very suppressive or it's trying to hide or mask symptoms or it's creating, like worse issues. The homeopathic remedies are really just pushing your body, giving it a little nudge, and the body then gets the force to respond and is healing itself, basically.
It's really, that was a great explanation. Excuse me. It's really so beautiful to see a remedy work. For instance, when I was pregnant, I had a lot of nausea, and I'm reading through, I always say to match the emotions with the symptoms. I have always used Nux vomica for any type of tummy stuff, and that's like my go-to. I mean, I carry it in my purse. But when I was pregnant and I was nauseous, that didn't really touch it. And so then I'm reading along, and sepia was me. Like, I was weepy. I wanted to be cuddled, but I didn't want to be touched. I mean, all the things. I don't remember all the details, but that was so me, and that's what worked so well. And then as far as allopathy, masking the symptoms, I have used, on my daughter, she's 5, I've used Motrin 2 times ever. And I really steer clear of that because so recently she's dealing with like a little fever and some aches. And the other day she had a really bad headache. So I was like, okay, I have this Motrin here for, I don't know what reason. And I guess like an emergency or something. And so I said, well, let me just give you a little bit of this and take away your headache. Cause nothing was really touching it. So I gave her, she's 5.5. So I gave her like the smallest dose of Motrin, and she instantly felt better. Felt better. It was masked. And then her fever went down, and I was happy because she didn't have a headache anymore, but I was also feeling frustrated and almost blind because now I don't really know what's going on. And I have this like weird emotion towards using things like that, because I'm like, okay, this is good. You feel better, but do you really feel better? And then I think it prolonged the illness. I mean, we're like on day 3 of a low grade fever. And I really think that it just prolonged it. I mean, yes, she was more comfortable for a little while, and I'm happy that I did that. I don't regret it, but I felt blind for like 5 hours, you know? Um, so I really love to go holistic. Obviously, that's what my whole mission here is and everything I teach, because it really pushes the body to heal itself. So that's why I love it. So another question I had, I learned a little while ago about using a remedy, and I forget how the woman described it, but basically giving a remedy like every 15 minutes for an hour to see if you see a change. Do you recommend that? Like how when
Yeah,
you're
so it really it's like homeopathy is so individualized, so it really just depends on a whole bunch of factors. So I mean, the vital force of the person or the child, like how strong are they? Are they weaker? The remedy itself, is it kind of is it a more delicate remedy? Does it need to be, given more often? And like the sickness, like how aggressive is the fever? How aggressive is the pain or whatever they're dealing with? Do you need to hit it more often, or do you want to give it, less in between? So it just really depends. Um,
do you want
if you
me
really
to give
want to
you
see
a
immediate,
scenario?
yeah, yeah, sure.
Would that be easier? So, because I understand, I have literally books and books and books on this, so I understand that it's so expansive. So, I will narrow it down to kind of what my group of moms kind of go through. Okay, so the other day, my daughter says, "Oh, my cheek hurts right here." So, right here behind her jaw and under her ear, her little lymph nodes are swollen. She has a little bit of a sore throat. She's just feeling kind of funky. So I'm like, okay, what direction do I go? I kind of went towards the ear infection, but I wasn't really sure. And what I found interesting was nothing in my books matched her completely. So I was a little bit blind in that. So that's kind of a strange scenario. Another scenario would be my throat hurts. I have a little bit of a runny nose. I meaning child. And so then I would first go for like cold calm. And then I would do that every 15 minutes for an hour. That's usually where I go for that. Um, Maybe that's a good
Yeah.
scenario. So there's like
Yeah. I
maybe
mean,
a
like,
cold coming on.
yeah. I mean, like for acutes, like there's nothing wrong with doing every 15 minutes, because in acute situations, like the illness is like generally more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And because you're dosing low, 30, 12, 30C, so you could easily do, every 15 minutes because you want to see results, right? And you want to know if you have the right remedy right off the bat. You sometimes don't want to wait till tomorrow to know,
Right.
like if it was working or not, because like tomorrow it could be way worse.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you could definitely do every 15 minutes, every 20 minutes, in water, especially that does really well, like diluting 2 pellets in water, shaking it, a couple times before each dose. The water tends to work a little faster, and it is a little gentler as well. It's just like a method that I really like to use with people. But yeah, if you don't get any result by then, after an hour and 15, then for sure that if there's no results, you've got the wrong remedy. So it's at least sooner than later, and then you can switch it up.
Yeah, I liked when I learned that my niece actually had, she was 7 at the time, and she had a fever, and she normally responds very well to belladonna. And I think that she just evolved, and being older at that time, belladonna just wasn't touching it. And she was lethargic. She had like vomited a couple times. And my sister was like, okay, like she's at like a 103.2. She's miserable, and I'm kind of lost here because we tried everything that usually works with her. So I called a friend, and she recommended doing bryonia. And in that situation, it worked so well. I mean, this was like 2 or 3 days, and this bryonia just knocked it right out. But what I liked about the every 15 minutes was we need a reaction like now. Like you said, I can't wait. I don't want to wait till tomorrow. Like she's miserable. So getting a faster result, I really liked that. And then we saw like, okay, belladonna wasn't working. And an hour later we can try something else. So bryonia was the one. And now that's what she responds to. I thought that was interesting that as she got older, that remedy really changed. Because, in this book, it'll say often like, A pulsatilla child is like this and like describes the child, all the emotions, the body, and everything. So that's kind of, but I didn't know that about water. I did hear that you don't want to touch. So I have some of these. I have some in the little melty ones, but I'm having a hard time finding those again. But I thought that you don't want to touch them either. I thought that that kind of can reduce.
Yeah, it's just that they're very energetically sensitive because it is essentially energy medicine. So, contact with your hand, there's a lot of, energy that comes through your hands. And then there's, the strong scents. Um, the sensitivity of the person, it just depends. Like you could be taking a remedy and then something traumatic happens to you, like you have a shock or like you hear bad news or something and you're emotionally, like it could be anything. If you're
Mm-hmm.
sensitive and then you hear like some bad news, that could even antidote your remedy and it could stop working because you're now like on a different state, like you were here but now after that shock you're like here now and you need like a remedy to like bring you down to where you were. So it's all frequency, it's all vibrations, it's all basically, I mean, in the simplest of terms, you're just trying to match the frequency of your current state to the frequency of a remedy, and I guess that is like the easiest way to describe it.
Right. So there's one thing I'm pretty aware of, like EMFs around my daughter. So, I'm like, okay, you don't feel good. You're laying on the couch watching TV. And then she's like, can I play a game on my iPad? I'm like, okay. Well, you have like all these things coming at you and I'm trying to treat you, with energy medicine. So I feel like those things could be interfering. I could possibly be overthinking that, but it sounds like I'm on the right track with that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know like specific details about,
Yeah.
like EMFs and, like all of that kind of stuff. But I mean, I would still take it with a grain of salt. Like
Mhm.
I've told people, just be aware, coffee could antidote and they drink like coffee 3 times a day and they're fine, so it really just depends like on the person and how they are, and maybe some things might antidote, some things might not. So I like to make people aware of it, but also, take it with a grain of salt. Every like different things work for different people. Some people are more sensitive, and if the remedy's gonna work, it's gonna work. So
Right, right.
yeah.
And when it does, it's incredible. It is so amazing. I did also read, what was the thought I just had? Yep, thought just went right out of my brain. So I also had messaged you about talking about using homeopathy during pregnancy and during labor. My sister actually turned her breech baby with a lot of things, but pulsatilla was one of the ones that we give some credit to. So do you have some recommendations or like maybe like a top few that you would recommend for um, pregnancy, like especially starting out? I started to cut you off again, but um, because it's so expansive and because there's so many things, I mean, I have quite the collection because when I do look in my book, I want to have that option on hand. But I like to give my clients like a top 10, a top 20. Like, this is your starter kit. You can do a lot with this, whether it's with my essential oils or with my homeopathy. So, do you have like a top few if that's how you want to go about it for pregnancy and birth?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple that come to mind for sure. So pulsatilla is obviously a big one. Pulsatilla is a big hormonal remedy. It's great for like in your situation, like you were saying, like if the baby needs to be turned, it can even be used for like inducing labor if like the time of labor, the contractions aren't necessarily happening or you need to get things moving. So definitely and across the entire pregnancy, even during labor and after, it's pulsatilla is a great go-to to have on hand. Aconite is really great, especially say when the water breaks and it's time to go to the hospital or it's time to like start going into labor. That fright that might happen, the fear of like there might be like a fear of death, there might be like great anxiety. So aconite's really amazing for that situation, for the sudden fright. um, Arnica, I'm sure everybody really knows arnica, but it's really great for, the bruising, the swelling, the tearing. Bellis pranis is another one that you could consider for deeper tissue healing. Arnica can do really amazing stuff, but if you need something a little bit more and arnica is not really helping, you could add Bellis pranis to that. Um, Obviously, there's remedies for things like hemorrhoids, bladder infections, morning sickness. Like Sepia and ipecac are really great for the morning sickness. Sepia, it's like every smell causes nausea. Even like the thought of cooking food,
That was
can
me.
cause that nausea. Yeah, so sepia is really great for that. And ipecac as well. Like the vomiting just doesn't stop, and it's not helping, and it's just not, there's no relief at all. Bladder infections, a go-to is always Cantharis. It's a Spanish fly remedy. It's really, really amazing for the burning that happens during bladder infections.
Can you tell me that one more time? I'm making some notes.
Yeah, Cantharis.
Okay.
It's really good
Bladder.
for bladder infection. There's lots that are good for that, but that's kind of like the go-to one I would start with, unless there are specific symptoms that point to a different remedy. Apis as well is good for that. Staph agria, like after intercourse, always after intercourse. It's called like the honeymoon cystitis, because it's the cystitis that comes on after having sex. There are remedies for like the premature labor. So we have the caulophyllum, which is really good for inducing labor, as well as pulsatilla. The difference is whether or not they're chili. So it's small things like here and there. What else do we have? I told you about during labor. Like C-section, that's also a really interesting one, because obviously arnica as well for that, for the swelling. Phosphorus if there's like, say, like vomiting after the anesthesia. But one really interesting remedy for C-sections or after C-sections is Staphysagra. Particularly, well, it's good for like incisions and things like that. But there is like a mental emotional component like after the fact, that like the mom will feel like something was taken from her against her will. There's like this indignation, this like like after specifically the C-section. It's like something to do with that whole experience and how it weighs on them after the fact. So Staphysagra is really awesome for
Well,
that.
and I have, because I deal primarily with, let me unplug this. I deal a lot with mothers having home births, natural births, unmedicated births. And I did have a coaching client who actually had to have a C-section, and that wasn't what she planned. And the emotions after that, obviously, was like, my body failed me. I didn't do something right. So that's where I would recommend something like that. I'm going to have to get a list of these things from you after this, so I have it all, so I can put it into my collection. Sayla, sorry. Sayla, here. This is what mom while working looks like. I'm like, stay in the room. Here's the charger. Yeah, but I think that one would be really great for those emotions that come after, because that's a really hard thing sometimes for mom to deal with, and everyone around her is like, but you're okay and baby's okay, and she's like, but this isn't what I planned, and so things like that. So that's a really good one. I'd never thought about that.
Yeah, there's obviously like a ton more, like for the postpartum depression. Um, there's a few remedies there. I mean, like we've talked about sepia a couple of times now, but it's really like uh, the washerwoman remedy, where she's just overworked. She has no time for herself. She just feels like she's needed all the time. There's no personal freedom. Everything is just overwhelming. Uh, like she couldn't stand to look at her husband, like she could murder him. The child is kind of like, oh, it's this responsibility, but she maybe feels no connection. So sepia is a big postpartum, but there are a lot of mental emotional, remedies like the Ignatias and the Natmirs that are deep seated trauma and emotional stress. It just really comes down to the why and like that's when you start getting into the chronic, right? Versus acute consultations, because the acute, it's kind of like, what are your symptoms now? How long have you had them? Where are they? What makes them better? Once you start going into the mental emotional space, it's like, what happened when this all started? How did you feel mental emotionally? Like what was your mental emotional state? you really have to dig, and that's why those consultations end up being like 2 hours, is because you're just trying to figure out like
Right.
why do you feel that way, because that emotion will connect to the emotion of another remedy.
And
So
you do online consultations, right?
yep, yeah,
Okay.
I do. Yep.
Great. So I'm definitely going to put that into my community space where I share all of these things. I'm definitely going to put that in there because I agree that, or I know that there's so much that goes into this. So having a mom in that space is like beyond my knowledge, you know? I mean, I have all the books. I can recommend a lot of things that I've used, things that I've seen work. But if it gets deeper into that, I would love to send them to you so that you could have that one-on-one with them. Um, so, okay. I interrupted you. So where are we at? I have this list of
Yeah.
list of things because I was so excited for
Did
this
you want to
conversation.
keep talk? Do you want to keep going into remedies, or I have like a few more that come to mind,
Yeah,
but too
please,
much.
anything you can think of. I know you made some notes. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's also like for the baby after birth, there are like some common things that come up. So we've got like thrush, for example,
Mm-hmm.
that's super common. Borax is a really amazing remedy for that. We have the colic. Chamomilla, I would say, aside pulsatilla, is like one of my top remedies for babies, just when there is like the incessant crying that will not stop
Mm-hmm.
and the baby cannot be helped, like wants to be held, wants to get put down, wants to get held again, that will not stop crying. There's just no rhyme or reason to what is going on. Um, and especially great for teething as well. Chamomile is a
Yep.
good baby remedy.
I have seen that work beautifully. That's on every one of my baby shower gifts. I'm like, you need this. Trust me. You might not know what it is. Call me after baby. You're gonna want this.
Yeah.
And it's always. I really love to be. That's why I want to have a list. When after this, I will we'll talk and we can come up with like a list that I can make the top 10 or whatever, because it always happens in the middle of the night. Like that's when you wake up and you're like, what's going on? We have a fever. We have a crying baby. I'm walking up and down the hall. Nothing's
Mm-hmm.
working. You have that chamomilla right there in your toolbox. So I like to have my friends and my clients be very, you know, to have it all ready to go. So you're not sending somebody to CVS hoping they have it, you know, in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Well, it's good to stock up and have your kit ready because, like
Mm-hmm.
you said, if it happens in the middle of the night, you can't get the remedy from
Right.
anywhere. So good to kind of stock up, get a couple potencies of a few different main remedies, and then you're ready to go, kind of thing.
So what else do you have on your list for babies?
Um, so I had the colic, and then the jaundice as well, which is very common. So
Mm-hmm.
chelidonium is a really good liver remedy. Um, Again, it just depends on the situation. So pulsatilla could be useful in that situation as well. But other general remedies that are good to have on hand, Hep Self is really awesome if there's like infections or pus, you know, for anything. Pulsatilla is really great for any cold and flu stuff, especially when there's like a lot of yellow green discharges. Um, Arsenicum, I think you had mentioned before, is really
Mm-hmm.
great for like food poisoning symptoms. So it doesn't have to necessarily be food poisoning, but you know, like vomiting, diarrhea, that kind of stuff that won't let up. A lot of burning pains. Arsenicum is really good for that. We talked a little bit about belladonna for fevers,
Mm-hmm.
especially when they're sudden. Um, and aconite is really a go-to for any cold flu stuff.
Okay.
It's usually best in the first like 24 hours um, of any cold. Yeah, first 24 hours, and then you know the acute usually changes, flip-flops very quickly. So you just have to kind of adjust based on how the symptoms
Okay.
change.
I don't even know if I have aconite. I just keep buying them. Anytime I read about a remedy, I just buy it so that I have it. You never know. Can you tell me a little bit about salts? Because I keep seeing this come up and I don't know what that is, or I don't know anything about the salts.
Yeah, so there's 12 tissue
Tissue
salts.
salts.
Um, they're they're done in an X potency, so they're more closer to the raw substance than any of the C potencies. They're
So
all made out of the
that's the X and the C. That's the difference. So an X
yeah.
is a salt.
Yes, that's a tissue salt. would be
Oh,
the X.
okay.
And then the C potencies are way more diluted, and so they work on a more deeper energetic level.
So I have
The tissue salt.
30x belladonna here.
Okay, yeah, you can get the X's in any potency really, but
Okay.
the X, like you'll usually get like a 6X
Yeah.
for a tissue salt. Yeah. So those are just the primary kind of building blocks to the body. You've got like ferrum phos and all the different, you know, um, salts that are involved in like making you and minerals. So they kind of help with, there could be like a blood drainage if you need to clear mucus, or if you need to help with blood flow. Or, like ferrum phos is really great for the onset of a cold. So aconite ferrum phos will usually be like a go-to if there's a cold coming on. Mag phos, magnesium phosphoricum, is really great for, say, like cramping, abdominal cramping, PMS cramping, because it helps with like muscle contractions. So they each kind of have like a thing that they're good for, and they're kind of just like lighter remedies. Like you don't have to worry so much about taking them, and you can get like even the tissue salts that have all of them together in one, so you could just take it preemptively, just to kind of strengthen your overall system. And they're really great to use in addition with other remedies. So say you're, like I mentioned, the aconite, say you're doing like an aconite 30C or 200C because you feel like you're getting like a cold, you can always add the tissue salts on the side, and they won't like interfere at all with the other remedies that you're using.
Awesome. So I do say, and I hope this is accurate, that there are no contraindications with using homeopathy. I mean,
No, it works really well with any and all other modalities, especially with allopathic medicine. There's no, because they're just working on completely different planes. The allopathic medicine is very like physical. It's working on the physical plane. It's making your body do something on with the blood or with the tissue or with the lungs, and with homeopathy it's basically on the energetic plane. So it's working very, very deep, and it's working on like a molecular level. Like it's very different.
I love that, especially with kids, because you can try so many different things. Again, when you use Motrin or Tylenol, it just puts you in this box and you're like, okay, well, that didn't change anything, and now I can't do anything else as far as other allopathic remedies. And I don't like that. I'm very hands-on. As soon as she starts feeling something, I'm like, what are your symptoms? Tell me all the things. It's cute. I've been seeing an acupuncturist for a while now, and so the tongue pictures have been very much a part of our, so she'll say, well, look at my tongue, and I look at it and I go, okay, I don't really know what that means because I'm not a Chinese medicine, but I'm like, tell me all the things you're feeling, especially emotions. So that really helps me to lead. And then I just try all kinds of things. I mean, you should see the mess next to me right now after 3 days of this. I'm like, I have all kinds of remedies sitting next to me, which is also why my place looks like it's a mess, because I'm a mom and we haven't slept in a few days. So, okay, what are some other things you have in your notes that you wanted to share with me?
Yeah, well, I was gonna touch on something you had mentioned earlier about using the Motrin, and it's like suppressive, and you feel like you're kind of stuck after that. A lot of people don't realize that actually like using suppressive, and I don't want to like scare you by any means, but this is like long-term suppression, right? This isn't like, oh, you take Tylenol, bad things are gonna happen to you. But a lot of people don't realize that long-term suppression can actually make you sicker over time, because what you're doing is you're essentially your body is showing you all of these symptoms that it needs for you to help it heal. And when you mask it and you just kind of shove it down and you keep using suppressive medications, you're essentially pushing what could have been an easy thing to heal now into deeper levels of your body. So, like skin is like an easy example. There's lots of examples where people had eczema or psoriasis and they used suppressive creams, and then they got asthma after that. And that's all connected. And there are millions of examples like that, where you suppress one thing and you get another issue, and you think, oh, I've cured my eczema, and now I have like a new thing. I don't know why it popped out of nowhere, but really it is all connected to you know, everything's connected, and people a lot of times don't realize that because they're so used to the suppressive medications, and it's just a different way of looking at healing and health and
Absolutely. And I'm really, the charger's right there if you need it. It's right there. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because that is 1000% how I feel and how I treat myself and my daughter. Like, that's why I'm like, I'm going to announce to everyone that the super crunchy mom gave her kid Motrin. The headache is the one thing that I run into where I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, but you're so right. And I believe that my child and my nieces, who we all do, we have 5 girls between us, and we all are on the same wavelength as far as how we treat our children. And I really believe that they are healthier because of that. They're healthier because we don't suppress. So that's what I mean. It's like I've took away that one symptom, but I think that her fever has lasted longer because I didn't allow it to just do what it needed to do. And I had honestly a moment of weakness where she was just crying that her head hurt, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I have this here. So, which is usually not how I am, but I really agree with you. And I think that's a great point about skin, because I learned a lot through seeing my acupuncturist that your skin is your first sign of something, what's going on inside. So, I had some gut stuff that I was dealing with, and I had this patch of dry, itchy skin on my back. And I had no idea that those two things were, in correlation. So I told her about that, and I was like, I don't know, I had this. And she's like, oh yeah, that's because, we're dealing with your gut health. And when that cleared up and I paid attention to my diet and I did my herbs and all of my things, it cleared up. It's not there anymore. So that's so true. That's so true. And I appreciate you bringing that up. And then also, if you read the side effects or the small print on the kids Motrin, it's not good.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that'll
Well, a lot
probably
of
be the last
times,
time I do that.
yeah. Well, there's nothing, that's the thing. Like there's nothing wrong with taking Tylenol and, you know, like occasionally for sometimes you just, there's, like you said, like they're crying, you don't know what else to do, and like you just want to help your child. You don't want to just see them suffer and like nothing's working, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like sometimes it's okay. And like that's what I like to like tell people is like you don't have to be by the book all the time.
Right.
Like you're already doing way more than everybody else
Right.
is, you know what I mean? So like stressing over like little things like that, it's really like I don't think it's beneficial. Um, but yeah, I mean, with the whole suppression thing, like a lot of times that's why, you know, part of the consultation, you go into like health history. What did you have when you were 15? What happened when you were 20? Like all of your issues, because most likely, and a good sign that we're healing in the right direction
Mm-hmm.
is that, you know, like you've got asthma now, you had, like, we'll go back to the psoriasis case. You had psoriasis when you were 25, and then when you were 30, you got your asthma. Most likely, the psoriasis will return. That means we're healing in the right direction. You want to go backwards, right?
Right.
Um, and although it might suck for a little bit, it means that we're going in the right direction. And now this time you'll have those homeopathic remedies to help you through the psoriasis now, and just keep going until, you know, you're basically better. Um,
Definitely.
yeah.
And by using these remedies, you're allowing your body to heal what's going on, so it's truly healed and you truly become immune to something, right? So instead of just suppressing it. And I agree with you about not stressing over it, and I'm really not. I think I'm just being funny about it a little bit, because I'm like, I had a weak moment. Because I myself, I do not take, and I'm fortunate for my health, but I do not take any over the counter anything, antibiotics. I treat everything naturally. However, I have like one little bottle of ibuprofen that I've had for probably 2 years, because when I have bad cramps, I allow myself, it's like my joke, like you can have 2 Motrin or ibuprofen a month. That's all you get. So like, when are you going to do it? And actually, since I've been treating myself with acupuncture and dealing with perimenopausal stuff through that, and essential oils and all the other things I'm doing, cramping hasn't been as bad. But, I read in one of the homeopathic books, actually, the guy who wrote the book was like, don't sit there and suffer. Like, just take the ibuprofen, but then let's talk about and let's figure out why you have the headache. So take it, move on with your day, don't stress over it, but let's go back to why you're having a headache. So since I have you at my fingertips right now, what are your go-tos for headaches? So with my daughter, it was a frontal headache here. She had 101.6, 101.8 fever. That was pretty much it. It was just the headache. No stuffy nose, anything like that. Swollen lymph nodes.
Yeah.
So where could I have gone with that, you think?
So the beauty of headaches is like I could probably have like a 30-minute consultation with you just on the headache itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because homeopathy, yeah, you have to be so specific, right? Like frontal headache, if I look in my program, it will probably have, 150 remedies associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to like headaches, for example, it'll be like, okay, so your headache is at the front. What is the location? Is it moving somewhere? Is it like going to your ear? Is it going across your head? Like, is it like a band? What is the sensation? Does it feel like it's pressing? Does it feel sharp? Are there like sharp, pains? Is it like just like radiating somewhere? And what makes it better or worse? So you could say like my headache feels better when I put like a cold compress on it, or it feels better when I walk outside in the cool air, or it feels better when I'm like drink. It could be the weirdest thing. It'd be
Mm-hmm.
like I have a cold drink and it's fine, or just when I close my eyes and I'm in a dark room, and all of those specific things point to a different remedy. So
Mm-hmm.
it really just depends like on
Yeah.
the specific, and it's yeah, just location. What I tell people, and we didn't really talk too much about this yet, but like how to choose a remedy,
Yes, please.
it's based on a few things. So it's based on obviously the symptoms. What are the symptoms? The location of the symptom. So in this case, a headache, is it at the front? Is it at the back? Do you have it at the temples? So you've got location, then you have sensation. What does it feel like? It's the pressure, it's like a band around my head, like what is the sensation of it? What is the pain like? Um, and then what makes it better or worse?
Mm-hmm.
So the going outside, what makes it worse, is when I lay down, it's better when I'm standing. So all of those things, if you cover those locations, yeah, four things.
Mm-hmm.
If you cover those four things for each symptom, that will help you to find the best remedy that matches your situation.
Okay. Good. With this book, I love this book a lot. I keep going back to this because you can tell that it's been well used. I love this because it simplifies things. Like it has just like for instance, headaches, and then it goes into each one of the remedies, and it's just a great, quick summary of that. Yeah, I couldn't quite figure out her headache, and it's interesting because she would say, she would drink. I don't know why I wasn't really thinking about this as much because I usually do, but she's like, drink something, and she'd go, oh, that's weird, my headache went away. I'm like, oh, okay. And then she's like, oh, it hurts. And when we would go outside in the heat, it's really hot here in Florida. She was like she literally has been outside 2 times in 3 days because every time we go outside, she's like, oh, it just makes my head hurt. So, but I don't really know how to, I guess I just need to read through my book a little bit more and see which part of the headache is like,
Well,
heat makes it.
a really good like home prescriber tool, and one that I use sometimes as well if I don't have access to my books and stuff. abchomeopathy.com or .ca, I can't remember. I think it's .com. They have a remedy finder app
Mm.
on the website that's really, really cool if you're okay to spend, like 10 minutes or so really putting the symptoms in there.
Mm-hmm.
But it really, like, you just click the remedy finder app and it'll say, okay, what part of the body? You say head. And then you just follow it and you click all the boxes that apply to your
Ooh.
situation. And then at the bottom, it'll show you a bunch of remedies and a percentage of how well they match you. So this is actually how I initially this was like the first time ever that I used homeopathy on myself. It was years and years and years ago. I had a really, really bad urinary tract infection. And in that situation, you're like, I don't know what to do. This is like the worst thing ever. It's so uncomfortable. I basically used this tool and I found Cantharis and I went out and I just bought it for myself, or I got Amazon to send it to me. I don't remember. And I was better within like 20 minutes. And I sat there like, what is going on? But I had used that tool essentially to figure out like what remedy I needed based on all my symptoms. So that I find is really helpful, especially because the books they can be limiting. And if you do have some really specific remedies, or it's like a little bit vague, or the book doesn't have all the
Mm-hmm.
details, because each remedy, it's pages and pages and pages of stuff, and you're only getting like 3 points in there. Um,
Yes.
so the
That
app,
is so exciting. And it's an app too, right? ABC Remedy Finder.
yeah, I don't know if you do it on your phone. You could do it on your phone, like on a browser. I don't know if it's an actual app, but you just go to the
I
website, and
love that.
yeah, it's really good.
That's really exciting. And which dilution would you recommend starting with? Is that kind of, again, kind
Yeah,
of broad or?
30C is safe. Um, I always recommend 30C, especially for, I mean, 200 is great for acutes too, if you're sure like this is what I need. Um, I would not prescribe like like if you want to do above 200C, I would definitely do that through a
Mhm.
homeopath, because those are very strong remedies. 30C is great for like at-home prescribers, 200 for, but if you're unsure of the remedy, it could be one or the other. 30C is better for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you think about blends like cold calm and things like that? Do you have any opinions on that?
So the classical way is to do one remedy at a time,
Mhm.
but I'm not necessarily against, like doing the blends, especially if you're really unsure and you have no idea. The blends, they tend to have a few in
Mhm.
there, and um, the only reason we generally say not to do, multiple remedies at once is because we don't necessarily know how they react to each other. Um, but the blends tend to work well if you're kind of in a pickle and you're stuck and you don't know what to do.
I think it really works. I think it really works well with kids too. Like when my daughter was younger and she couldn't really tell me all the things. So I could just look at her and go, okay, like her eyes are a little watery. She has a little bit of a stuffy nose. She's kind of blah 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 blah. And so the cold calm was just like, I'm looking at her. I can tell what's going on only so much. So that was a nice tool there. And as she gets older, I definitely find myself using more specific remedies because I can talk to her and she can, share with me a little bit more what's going on. So I have I guess I have a subscription or whatever it's called to Amazon because I get a packet of cold calm like every other month. So I have like a huge collection of it. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like if they ever stop selling it or something, I at least have that, that and Nux Vomica just comes like every 2 months. I just have a collection of it.
Yeah.
Um, so are there some more things that you wanted to talk about? Because this has been so good and so much information. So
Um, well,
good takeaways.
there's obviously tons of stuff. But I feel like we did a pretty good like
Mm-hmm.
intro. I could definitely go on tangents and get way more confusing, but I think we should refrain. Yeah, there's so much to talk about with homeopathy, and like, we could even go into the history of it, how the proof, like how all the remedies were created and like all of that, but it's like it's a lot of info, and I don't want to overwhelm people
Well,
with.
I would be more than happy to do another one with you like this and talk about it because I am so interested in it and it's so exciting to me. So the last one I had on my list, and you mentioned arnica for labor. And a couple more things that I like arnica for. One, I listened to a podcast and this homeopath, right? Is that what you call yourself, right? A homeopath. Okay. So she said, I'm like a practitioner. I don't know. She said that they live in a snowy environment and her kids snowboard a lot. And she said that they carry arnica in their snowsuits. Like that way, if they have any type of injury, immediately take arnica. And I carry it in my purse. My niece actually fell and hit her temple right here. She's 3, and it instantly swelled. And my sister was nursing her, and I like got my little pellets out. Luckily, I had the melty ones. And I was just like, get this in her mouth. And I really believe, I mean, it was a nasty little swell, but I really believe it kept it from going anywhere. Like once I gave that to her, it stopped swelling. It was big and it was ugly, but it didn't get any worse. And I felt really confident with that. So that's one that I also carry along, without being around kids all the time. And
Yeah.
I also had a tooth pulled, and my uncle, who was an acupuncturist, he was like, here's my list of things, and arnica was one of them. And I didn't even take the Tylenol or whatever they gave to me because I didn't have the pain. I mean, it was pretty crazy, and I barely swelled at all.
Yeah.
So that's one
Yeah,
of my
I'm a
favorites.
huge advocate for arnica. It's great for dental extractions. It's great for even stroke, any like fall or injury. I give it to everybody. Like everyone, like anywhere I go, they say they've fallen. I'm like arnica. Like I'm
Yeah.
always. If you don't know anything else about homeopathy, just get to know arnica because it's so great for like bruising, every kind of injury. I had a really actually interesting like case with a patient of mine who had like really severe fibromyalgia actually. She was on like 5 Percocets a day.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I took her case and I gave her like a remedy that was good for her case, but hadn't seen like a lot of movement. And then she had mentioned, you know, like she fell going to the bus and like she was all bruised up and all swollen and everything. And she actually had like she had a huge history of falling and injuries over time and time and time. And I ended up giving her like a strong dose of arnica. And we continued that and we ended up just like keep going up in potency because it was helping her fibromyalgia. So
Wow.
I ended up taking her up to like a 10 or something and she was down to like 1 Percocet every like 3 days. It was pretty impressive.
Oh,
So
that's
there must
amazing.
have been something there with like her history of injury that eventually like, her body was just like, I've had enough. Like I'm giving you this like chronic, you know, illness or it's it's hard to say, you know, the body works in crazy ways, but that was like a really cool experience that I had with
That's
her.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's one. And then for the flu, I can never say the Aussie one.
Yeah.
How do you say that?
I say oscillococcinum. I've heard other homeopaths pronounce it in different ways. So osseo is probably a safe,
Osseo.
yeah,
That's a good
probably a
way.
good way to do it.
That's a good
Yeah.
way. That one I have had great results with personally. And my niece, my niece who is 8 had the same thing my daughter has, but she had really achy neck yesterday and just really did not feel good. And so I suggested my sister give her that because she did in the beginning and she didn't really notice anything. And so sometimes I feel like with homeopathy, it's like we start out with that, and if I don't see like an immediate result, then I feel like by day 2 or 3, I'm like, is this really still my go-to? You know, because it feels like it's like at the first sign of symptoms, the first sign of symptoms. So she gave it to her yesterday, and within an hour, she was like, she FaceTimed me and was like, I feel so much better. Oh my gosh, like that really worked quick. And it's funny because I've been vegan, vegetarian for pretty much my whole entire life. And when I actually looked up what that's made of, I was like, oh, well, I make exceptions because this works really good.
Well, the thing is, if it's homeopathic, you're probably not taking the substance at all, anyways, right? Because
True.
past a 30C, it no longer exists, right? It's just energy at
Yeah.
that point. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah.
But osteo is really great for like even preemptively, you know, like before you get sick, if you feel
Oh,
you're getting sick, or even after when you're already sick. So it's the whole the whole way along. Like you can take it, no problem.
I also, I also saw somewhere that you can, instead of taking the whole tube, you can just break that up into a couple different doses. What do you think about that?
I haven't heard of that. It's probably fine.
Well,
Yeah,
because
I don't see why
the
not.
theory behind it was what she was saying was like with homeopathy, it's like small doses often, early and often. And so I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. So like with my little 5-year-old, I'm like giving her a whole tube. It just seemed like a bit wasteful in a
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah,
So I was able to break it up into 3 different doses for her. It's hard to get those little pellets out, you know, and
yeah.
like, and then of course she wants to like lick her finger and take one at a time. Like, get in your mouth. I'm like, I feel like you're interrupting the process here. But
Yeah, no, that's fine because all of those pellets are medicated.
yeah,
So, you know,
yeah,
even if you get a couple of pellets in her mouth, you know,
yeah.
the energy is already transferring over. So it's not, yeah, I don't see. There's always that discussion of like, should I do 2 pellets out of the tube or five? And it generally doesn't matter necessarily. It's more so like the frequency of how often you're taking it because each time you're taking it, you're giving your body that little like push, that little
Right.
nudge, right? So every time you do that, your body needs to, you know, fight back a little bit. So if you do it too often or not often enough, you know, that's where the intricacies of, you know, potency versus how often you're doing it kind of come into play.
Right.
But generally speaking, you're fine with the 30C. You're the osteos, you know, especially if
Well,
you're sick already, you know, you probably need it a little more often anyways.
right. And so also Ossia is pretty expensive, you know, so it's like to do a whole tube, I just felt like it was a little bit wasteful. And so I've seen results, even with myself, just doing a half. So I really love that one. And it was funny because I Googled, I looked that up the other day to send a link to one of my coaching clients, and under the reviews were like, oh, more studies need to be done. We're not sure if this actually is just a, what do you call it? Placebo effect, you know? And then like the next article was like, this is the #1 prescribed or taken remedy in
Yeah.
France for flus.
Well, we could do a whole other podcast on like homeopathy and how it was suppressed and how many homeopathic hospitals existed in the, you know, in the US at one point
Yeah,
in time.
it was
And
like
that's
over
a whole
100,
other
right?
conversation to be had, you
I
know?
love it.
So,
Well, let's do
yeah.
it. Well, so before we end, if there's anything else you want to say, or also tell everyone where they can find you and what you have to offer. I know I looked on your website and you do the one-on-one consultations. So if you want to share that before we go.
Yeah, for sure. So my Instagram is much better _ naturally. All of my info website can be found on there as well, muchbetternaturally.com. I primarily do homeopathy, so acute consultations as well as chronic consultations as well, remotely or in person. I have worked with US clients, so remote is totally an option. And I'm also a metabolic balance coach, which primarily focuses on using food to balance hormones and with weight loss as well. So that's a whole other discussion to be had.
That's
That's really
right.
one.
I saw that. Well, we'll have
Yeah,
to schedule another one and talk about that. I love that.
yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Really
This was
fun.
fun.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we will schedule another one, and thank you to everyone that joined, and I'll talk to you soon.
Great chatting.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.